Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for what would normally be our Saturday upgrade and commander build video, except it's Monday, so it's a Monday upgrade and commander build video. We're going to be looking at the Tier 10 Spanish heavy cruiser, the Castilla, and I did a review on the ship, a Friday highlight, and I pretty much trashed the ship, to be honest. This ship is very below average in many areas compared to other tier 10 cruisers in the game. And the biggest thing, I think the weakness of the ship is just its armor. It needs more armor. That's what really needs to be buffed to make the ship much more enjoyable and playable in the game, in my opinion. With that being said, let's just go ahead and start talking more on the ship. So what kind of cruiser is she? Well, she's a heavy cruiser. She is a mid to long range cruiser. She does have torpedoes, but in hydroacoustic search, but she's not built and equipped to push in. One, because of her armor scheme, easily overmatched. Not an amazing turning circle radius or rudder shift time. These are 254mm guns, take a little bit to reload. So just the ship doesn't play well at all in close range. You suffer quickly, especially early on in a match if you push in. Mid to long range, mid-range like 12 to 15 kilometers, and then further back, which with her main battery range, if you don't take the range mod in the 6th slot, it's going to be 17.1 kilometers, but you get a spotter plane. I'll talk about that. So let's go ahead and talk about the armor. I really don't understand Wargaming's logic here. The only thing I can think is because they gave it a funny button with being the burst fire is one of the reasons why they decide to like crap on the armor on this ship. So you have a 25mm bow and stern, and then you have a 30mm upper armor belt, which drops into a 40mm armor belt. And then you have an icebreaker bow, and I think it's also on the stern. That's 40mm. So there's just not a lot that you're going to be able to withstand. You get overmatched really easily, especially once you start hitting the tier 9, tier 10, and super ships, especially the battleships in the game, right? So it's just you can't really take much punishment because the armor just can't withstand, and you can't bounce a lot when you have this type of armor scheme. Now, when we take certain things away here, you can see that the Citadel is above water. So if you go broadside, you will get clapped. I mean, it's a pretty long Citadel. I think they said the hull is quite similar to Napoli, if I recall correctly from when I glanced at the WoW's wiki. So even if you angle, like, it's still like difficult, right? Because you can still be overmatched and punched through into the Citadel. Because again, the biggest weakness of the ship, in my opinion, is the armor scheme. When we talk about the gun turrets, you have 250mm on the front, 125 to 100 on the side, 120 on the back, and then 150 to 100 on the top, with the barbettes having 220 around. And then your torpedoes, which are exposed right here. So if I take this away, you'll see that you get 2 racks of 5. And so if you have a lot of people focusing your superstructure, it is possible to have the torpedoes knocked out. I actually did it yesterday with the North Carolina, just the secondaries happened to hit it, but I think it was the tier 8 version, the Cataluna perhaps in that example. So that being said, let's talk about the modules. So we reached tier 10, so we don't have to research any modules, further modules. That's typical for most of the tier 10 tech tree ships in the game. There's a few exceptions. But with the main battery reload, or mod 3 and slot 6, we're getting our reload time down to 11.4 seconds, 180-degree turn time of 25.7 seconds, high explosive shell damage 3,450, the maximum AP shell damage 6,150. Hull 51,000 hit points. That's without survivability expert. So honestly, you're gonna want to take survivability expert. I can talk more about it then. We look at the commander. Torpedoes, they have a 106-second reload time, 8-kilometer range, 16,633 maximum damage, 62 knots. They're not fast torpedoes, kind of, I don't know, average, below average in terms of the torpedoes, with a 1.3 kilometer detectability range. So usually if you're using the torpedoes, it's like you're either kiting away from something and dumping the torps behind you, or you're YOLO rushing something with the ship. Gunfire control system, 17.1 kilometer range. Propulsion is 200,000 horsepower, gives you 37 knots. So, I mean, one of the things that this ship does do decent in being a tier 10 heavy cruiser is her speed. So with Sierra Mike, we can get up to 38.9. I probably should reference the speed in the highlight video, but so I do recommend giving yourself some speed, because if you're playing more mid to long range, maybe if you're juking or you're just trying to maneuver, avoid incoming salvos, the speed does help you in that regard. In terms of her upgrades, so the slot 1, I would just recommend taking the main Armaments mod 1. This is going to reduce the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by negative 20%, improve their survivability by plus 50%, and reduce the repair time, or improve the repair time, I should say, by negative 20%, especially how your torpedoes are exposed. And I mean, it's really the guns is the bread and butter in terms of what damage per minute you do get out of the ship. You know, you don't need magazine mod 1 because it just reduces the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So you just take Juliet Charlie if you're in ranked randoms, clan battles. But now I have to make the additional note that in update 13.11, this is 13.9 right now, but 13.11 they were planning to take Juliet Charlie combat signal array and replace it with Charlie Kylo, which will give you plus 5% HP hit points on your ship. So this will become a thing of the past, so we won't be talking about those in future updates. So I'm going to start making that reference note now. Then you have spotting aircraft. You can increase the action time of your spotter plane. So maybe that would be something you could talk about. So maybe I'll save it to once we start talking about consumables. In terms of the second slot, in terms of just a standard upgrade, I would say take the engine room protection. Reduces the risk of your engine and steering gears becoming incapacitated, and improves the repair time speed by a negative 20% on all accounts. Because you don't have a lot of armor, like I have had my engine, I have had my steering gears knocked out. So that's what I've went for. If you're going to be playing this ship a lot, maybe in the future wargaming, I think they're going to have to buff the ship. I'd be surprised if they don't buff it at some point in the future. Then I'd say take Hydroacoustic Search Mod 1. This will improve the action time of your Hydro, which is a 5-kilometer Hydro. So with you, I mean, there's always torpedoes in the game at the high tiers, right? So just having longer lasting Hydro will help your survivability in terms of just defense and avoiding torpedoes, hopefully. The third slot, there's two options I would recommend. One, the first I have is the Aiming Systems Mod 1. I'll put it on the right side of the screen here. And showing you the maximum main battery shell dispersion is negative 7%. Now, one of the things that's actually, besides the speed being decent here on Castilla, probably the best thing you can talk about on the ship, its main strength, despite its many weaknesses, is her 254mm guns. Their initial velocity and penetration is on par, just behind multiple of the Russian cruisers in the game, like Smolensk, Moskva, Petro, Stalingrad. So the AP performance is really well. Like I've pinned Tier 8 battleships, broadside and citadel them. So I've just elected to go for a tighter horizontal and vertical dispersion in my main battery shell dispersion. Then you get a little buff on your torpedo traverse speed and secondaries, but that's not the main reason you take this. Otherwise, other commanders will probably feel much more comfortable with main battery mod 2, improving your main battery traverse speed. When we take the 6th slot, we get a nerf to our main battery traverse speed. So here you can see it's 25.7 seconds, which is honestly pretty rough, and I'm pretty sure it's also with grease the gears on the commander. So some might not feel so comfortable with this if you're constantly repositioning inside port to starboard, right? So you might want the main battery mod 2, but I just prefer having tighter shell groupings, and I just try to be mindful and giving myself additional thought process and trying to turn my turrets sooner when needed. 4th slot, propulsion modification 1, reduces time to full speed, time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating. This will help you a little bit with the juking if you're playing mid to long range, so 12 kilometers and like back as an example. Otherwise, if you're not able to accelerate quickly all the way like torpedoes or like a Yamato salvo, you know, that's just gonna outright suck for you, if I'm being completely honest. So this is really the one you should go for, and that's what they recommend here in the game anyhow. And then on the 5th slot, I'd say take the Concealment System Mod 1. If this ship had a lot better armor scheme, then you could begin maybe talking about, oh, maybe you want to do a lighthouse build and you improve your steering gears mod 2. But the ship just has crap armor for a heavy cruiser at tier 10 with so much overmatch in the game. So you really want to do what you can to bring the concealment down. With our full conceal build, even with concealment on the commander, it's 11.7. So that makes it more, when I talk about playing mid-range, like 12 to 15 kilometers, like you can go dark, right, at 12 kilometers after you're not firing for 20 seconds or whatever. So this is really what you're going to want to take, in my opinion, for Castilla with how she currently is. Maybe if they buff the armor a lot in the future, then you could talk more about being a more staunchy cruiser that can take the hits a little bit better. But as is now, Consumables System Mod 1. Yeah. And then in the 6th slot, I'd say take the main battery mod 3, or you're talking about gunfire control system mod 2. Now, I'm going to say main battery mod 3 just to help you with your high explosive and armor piercing damage per minute, both of which are below average in the game. So when you've taken this, naturally it's going to help improve both of those accounts. You know, if you really want to keep playing like beyond 17 kilometers, all the time, consistently in the game, like you want to play back like 19, 20 kilometers regularly, I'd be kind of like, why? I mean, of course, there's certain points where maybe you're having to cut away from your flank that's collapsed, or you're trying to get back in the engagement, there's no enemy ships on your flank, so you use spotter plane, right? But in terms of just always needing to have the additional range, I'd be like, I don't know how I'd feel about that. So I just lean towards the main battery mod 3 to have that faster reload time. I think otherwise, without it, it's like 13 seconds, 13.1, maybe something like that. But of course, we take the hit on our main battery traverse speed, so to each their own, but you could also take this. So these would probably be the two ones here, and it's kind of not always, I feel like, that every upgrade I choose is actually the one that Wargaming recommends, so for the ship. So you know, when we talk about the armor scheme, it's like, okay, play Petro, play Stalingrad, play Moskva, but the armor's crap, right? The ships wouldn't be near as enjoyable if their armor sucked. You'd be like, no, I wouldn't play it. It kind of take away the joy. So I feel like that's kind of what they did with Castilla. It's just like, it's kind of like a Russian cruiser in terms of how our armor-piercing guns perform, armor-piercing main battery performs with penetration and all that, but we're going to give it a crap armor scheme, but as a replacement, we'll give it the burst fire consumable, which we're just about to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into armament. So high explosive, you have a 16% chance of causing fires on target. Now you could bump that up. You take these two, they'll get it up to 18. Then Demolition Expert, you could get it up to 19% as an example. So but this isn't the fire cruiser line. Like it would be Cerberus. It would be the Worcester. It'd be Goliath. I mean, there's other cruisers in the game at tier 10 that do the high explosive role better. And you shouldn't be using high explosive a lot on this ship. Sometimes, of course, you will, but other times you're going to mainly be firing armor piercing. But these do 2,450 maximum damage, and you'll pin 42 millimeters. So that means you pin the 32 millimeter threshold that a lot of the battleship armor scheme has at tier 10. So that's nice to have with these 254s. Armor piercing is really mainly what you'll be firing. For the most part, you'll do 6,150 damage. The initial velocity, 945 meters a second. Like, it's quite normal. Like, if I were to compare her to, like, let me pull up other tier 10 cruisers in the game just to kind of give you an idea. Golden Line might be not too far off. Yeah, 890. You know, you talk about Des Moines, then you're going to see 823, then 762, right? We talk about Napoli, you're going to see the 945, so that's actually close. So some of the more heavy cruisers, you'll have it. I'm assuming we're not far off here either, that 870. So in terms of her, with having the 254 millimeter and the initial velocity, shell velocity, and the penetration capacity of these guns, the armor piercing kind of becomes the sweet spot here on the ship. Torpedo-wise, 106-second reload time, torpedo range 8 kilometers, 16,600 maximum damage, torpedo speed 62 knots, kind of average, below average perhaps, detectability range 1.3 kilometers. Thankfully, you have air-based depth charge airstrike, not ship-based. It'd be very much a pain if it was ship-based. Reaches out 8 kilometers away, 2 available flights, 1 aircraft, attacking aircraft per flight, and bombs and payload is 2, so 2 bombs per plane essentially. So do maximum bomb damage of 4,900 as a whole. The burst fire consumable is going to give you 2 bursts in a series. Interval between shots will be 1.06 seconds. Reload time 25.1 seconds with having the main battery mod 3 in the 6th slot. So here you can see that the reload time, of course, will get nerfed. So you see it drop down to that 25.1. So I do use this when I'm playing Castilla. Naturally, you know, if I'm about to go dark or I'm trying to finish off a low health target or have a broadside like Minotaur, light cruiser or something, then naturally you want to utilize the burst fire. Consumables, standard damage control party for cruisers, 5-second action time, 60-second cooldown time, unlimited number of charges. Repair party, HP per second, 255. If you take India Delta, like random ranked or clan battles, which you don't think you should ever play this ship in clan battles, plus 306. So definitely recommend in random and ranked for sure if you're playing it here. Action time 20 seconds, cooldown time 80 seconds, number of consumables 4. We do run superintendent, so then that means we're getting 4 repair parties in just 3. And I think in the highlight video, I think I got a dreadnought out of it. So as much damage you take in a ship, you want the additional repair party. Spotting aircraft or fighter. Maybe you're taking fighter and ranked because matches are much closer in terms of the map. And you're playing more in a shorter ranged area. So maybe you're popping a fighter to see if there's an enemy ship on the other side of the island or whatever. Otherwise, you're mainly going to be taking the spotting aircraft, which extends your main battery firing range out to 20%. 100-second action time, 120-second cooldown time. We get 7 of these, so it's actually pretty decent, and because Superintendent helps us out there. Then you have a hydroacoustic search and defensive AA fire. I don't think you should ever be taking defensive AA fire. Your AA defense is 81. This isn't an AA cruiser. There's a lot of other tier 10 heavy cruisers, light cruisers that perform the AA role much better. And you won't always guarantee that you'll have ships or CVs or hybrids or whatever the next concoction or whatever that Wargaming comes up with that has planes. So really, it's hydroacoustic search because you're always going to have torpedoes, right? Whether they're coming from carrier, whether they're coming from submarines, whether it's coming from destroyers, cruisers, battleships, right? So this is just going to get your most money worth running hydroacoustic search regularly. 3.5 kilometer detection range of torpedoes, 5 kilometer range of ships. You spot subs at their maximum depth 2 kilometers away. Consumable action time 100 seconds, cooldown time 120 seconds. Number of consumables 4. If you take the November Foxtrot, it's going to reduce the consumable preparation and reload time. So you go from 60 to 57, 80 to 76, 120 to 114, 120 to 114 here. We can also take the Sierra Bravo to improve our hydroacoustic search consumable action time. So it's going to bump up to 110 seconds from 100 seconds. So I would recommend that. Otherwise, other combat signals, I'd probably be running the Hotel Yankee and damage when ramming. And then honestly, probably just go ahead and help with the fire chance because otherwise there's not much of a reason to take these others. I mean, you could talk about taking maybe reduce your fire duration on your ship with the India Yankee and then do something like that. And that's totally possible. You know, otherwise, probably something like this. Commander-wise, so as you see here, we do have Eye in the Sky. I just forgot I recently respec'd this commander because if not, you would have a 240-second cooldown time on this guy. on spotting aircraft. So Eye in the Sky is actually quite valuable, in my opinion. So I just saw that, so I was like, let me just point that out really fast. But right now there's no, if I remember correctly, there's no Spanish commanders that have any enhanced skills in the game. So they're all standard commanders at this point, standard skills. So let's say you had a 10-point commander. Where might you want to start with? Honestly, you're going to want Last Stand because the armor scheme is crap. You will lose your rudder shift, or rudder. You will lose your engine. It's just which battle is it going to happen in? So when you take Last Stand, the ship remains partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability with the engine and steering gears incapacitated. And then if you want to follow up the line like I have, then I would say take Eye in the Sky as your 3-point commander here. So that's what's giving us the 7. Otherwise, I think you go from 3 to 4. No, 4 to 5 with Superintendent, and then 5 to 7 with the Eye in the Sky. So that's what's giving us so many spotter planes here, because reducing the cooldown time and the number of spotting aircraft consumable charges that you have. After that, a 6-point commander, I personally would just go Adrenaline Rush. I mean, you could also do Superintendent if you really want to, but Adrenaline Rush, it will reduce the reload time on your main battery, your torpedo, secondary, airstrike armament, and then continuous AA damage gets a buff. So then you can begin to drop your reload time down from like 11.4 to 11 to like 10.5 and maybe a little lower depending on how much hit points you've lost, as it enhances ship parameters for each 1% of your HP lost. And the 10-point commander, I'd say take the Consummate Expert. So this ship, 2 things about it. The detectability range by sea is okay-ish for a tier 10 cruiser. It's getting quite competitive these days. It's not as bad as, per se, the Russian cruisers, as an example. So you get it to 11.7 by sea. But then I think, if I remember right, this ship has the worst detectability range by air among all tier 10 cruisers, which surprised me because I thought for sure Stalingrad was worse, and it wasn't. Like, Stalingrad was like 2 or 3 from the bottom, and this ship was the bottom, again, if I remember correctly. So 9.2 kilometer by air is rough. Like, the 2 things, like if you were talking about buffing this ship, buff the armor, make the armor belt stronger, make the bow and stern armor stronger, and then reduce this, bring it under 9 kilometer. Bring it down from like 9.2 to like 8 kilometers, as an example, or at least like further, because the spotting is what's going to really damage you a lot when you have hybrid ships and you have carriers flying around the map, right? Because this ship just can't take punches really well. Beyond that, so let's say you had a 10-point commander, then a 13-point commander. Then if you were doing this track, then I'd say go ahead and get Superintendent. You'll need the 4th repair party. You'll need the 4th hydroacoustic search if you, as an example, live towards the latter end of the battle, right? And then you'll get your 7th spotter plane, because you'd have 6 if you went this way first, and then 7. Not that you'll likely use all 7, but you're mainly doing this for the heal and the hydro. Then for a 14-point commander, then I'd say get the Grease the Gears, main battery traverse speed plus 15%. So otherwise, I think we'd be like 28 seconds, maybe somewhere around there. So we really want to be able to get that down here on the ship. From a 14 to a 17-point commander, I would say do Survivability Expert. So then now you're going to see our survivability jump up from the 51,000 to 55,500. Again, the ship doesn't take punches well, so you're going to need the additional hit points to quote-unquote spend in the high tier randoms ranked meta here in the game. And then in my the way I'm going right now is for a 21-point commander, I'd take the top grade gunner. Your secondary battery reload time, negative 10%, but it's the can be activated that whenever there's an enemy ship within your standard detectability range, your main battery reload time will reduce by negative 8%, not taking into account like fires or things like that. So then that's going to increase your damage per minute. So this is kind of, for me, among not all my heavy cruisers, but this is a kind of an example of what I might do. you know, if you're the one thing I would say with this build, I mean, there's a few things we could say here. It's kind of similar to the Alamante Ocrando when I did a commander build on it. So it's going to be a similar vibe in what I recommend with in terms of other skill points that you want to go for. I mean, you could do this exact build, but drop the eye in the sky and then take priority target. Newer players in the game, you're probably going to be challenged to just know to look around the mini map. Is there or the map is there an enemy battleship that's targeting you? You know, otherwise, if you I don't like right now, I wouldn't know if there's any enemy ships targeting me, right? Or I wouldn't know that, hey, someone just fired a salvo at me with at a distance of greater than 4.5 kilometers away. Now you're like, now Flimsy, you said that this is a mid-range to long-range cruiser, and you're saying to get this 4-point skill working, you would have to get underneath 11.7. Yes, that is entirely true. So it's a bit of a mix. You won't always get this skill activated in terms of the can be activated effect of bringing the main battery reload time down. It just depends on your experience and your positioning as a player, right? You've got submarines, you've got shores running around. Maybe you're fighting along some islands and there's some enemy ships 10 kilometers, 8 kilometers away on the other side of the island that you're fighting beside. So it's very valid, right? I can definitely understand that maybe most people, that this is a mid to long range cruiser, that this won't always be, you won't always get the full 4 points usage out of this. So with that in mind, this is what I say. You could drop the top grade gunner, and you could pick up priority target, and you could pick up demolition expert as an example. So now I'll know whenever an enemy ship is targeting me at a distance or anywhere on the map, right? I'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many are targeting you? And then we buff our fire chance by plus 1%, and we also increase the damage radius of our high explosive of all munitions when attacking submarines, right? So if I pull this up, you're going to see 19% chance of causing fires. So if you're newer or you're a player who's like kind of still feeling out map awareness and mini map awareness and positioning, then I'd say this is probably much more comfortable for you to take. Otherwise, if you're more comfortable kind of being blind, per se, and not having these two skills, then I'd say, hey, do this. But this is probably more an experienced player's build. Or otherwise, like, this is also still really good. I'm not speaking negatively of this. Like, this is probably overall average-wise, like, a pretty consistent build to be running here as a new player in a game. And I would like this build. Like, I like this build, and I also like this build. Like, both are good in their own way. If I was to say anything else different here, running any type of different build, I mean, you could drop the eye in the sky, pick a priority target, and then take top grade gunner, right? Because you'd have another 2 points accessible to you if I didn't have eye in the sky right now. That'd probably be like a third build option you could do. Yeah, otherwise I don't really feel the need, like, I don't feel like the need for radio location. Like, I feel like that'd be more for like maybe a light cruiser, something more agile. Your AA sucks. Your armor piercing is good. I guess this could be a fourth build option. If you want to take the heavy AP shells, then you're going to buff your AP damage from, was it the 6,000? Oops. I am blind. How did I just literally look at that and then now I don't see it? I was at the bottom. Derp. 6,150 to the 6,458. And then take incoming fire alert. So any salvos fired at a distance greater than 4.5 kilometers away, you'll get this incoming alert on like the top right of your screen. So this would probably be like a fourth build option I could see running here on Castilla. So the one I'm going to go for is this. The one I'm going to recommend most players to take is probably something like this. Then you could drop eye in the sky, take top grade gunner, or you could do something like this as well. I think those are the four main builds here on the ship. So That being said, I'm going to go ahead and draw the video to a close. We've hit the 30-minute mark. So if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you subscribe, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And until next time, take care.